Welcome to module number 3. In this module, we shall cover learning outcome number 2, understand how the PRINCE2 principles underpin the PRINCE2 method. What are we going to cover in this particular module? We would explain the PRINCE2 principles. We will cover the following 7 principles in greater detail. The 7 principles are: ensure continued business justification, that's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is learn from experience. Principle number 3 is define roles, responsibilities, and relationships. PRINCE2 has a clear definition of the various roles within the context of a project. Management by exception is another principle. Manage by stages is principle number 5. Focus on products, number 6. And tailor to suit the project is the 7th principle. Now let's kind of do a deep dive into each of these principles. Now, a word about principles. The PRINCE2 principles are guiding obligations that determine whether the project is genuinely being managed using PRINCE2 and ensure effective application and tailoring of PRINCE2 to any project. A simple example of a principle is, when we drive on a road, we comply to the lane change guidelines. We make sure that we do the blind check, the mirror checks, etc. Even though there's no one coming on the other side, even though there's nobody coming on the other lane, we make sure that we do our due diligence. It's just an example of a principle. Similar to that, we've got 7 principles that are applicable in the context of a project. Now, PRINCE2 is suitable for every project, regardless of type, size. It could be a very large investment, or it could be a small investment. Complexity, importance, level of risk, or delivery method. You could use a waterfall linear sequential model, or an agile modality, or a mix of both of them. No matter what delivery method we use, PRINCE2 is suitable for every project. Moreover, it can be used for all types of organizations, whether commercial, governmental, non-profit, or for-profit. Additionally, it is applicable for projects anywhere in the world, with its ability to incorporate country-specific regulations, business models, and cultures. So that's a word about PRINCE2 principles. Let's kind of do a deep dive into the first principle, business justification. So what's the key message? A PRINCE2 project has business justification sufficient to warrant investment to initiate the project and ongoing investment through to successful completion. If it does not, it should be stopped. That's a simple message pertaining to this particular principle. Now, there must be a justifiable reason for starting a project. And not only do we need a reason to start, but that particular reason or justification must remain valid and be revalidated throughout the life cycle of the project. The business justification drives decision-making to ensure the project remains aligned with the benefits sought and contributes to business justification. Now, organizations that lack rigor in business justification may find that projects proceed even when there are few real benefits, or when a project has only tentative associations with the business strategy. Poor alignment with business strategy can also result in organizations having a portfolio of projects that have inconsistent or duplicated objectives. Now, compulsory projects, such as those driven by legislation or regulation, still require justification for chosen approach to ensure it represents the best value of money. A simple example of a benefit for a compliance initiative is you could save on any loss of money because of reputational damage, etc. Now, all parties involved in the project will need a balance between expected benefits, costs, and risks for them to have business justification for their involvement. Now, to simplify, a business justification is a balance between three key elements. Do the benefits of a particular investment outweigh the cost and the risk of that particular investment? Now, the business justification for a project may change. Therefore, it is important that what the project is delivering remains consistent with the evolving justification. An example of this one would be a city council in one of the cities has decided to build a conference center, but immediately after COVID hit the world, they had to pivot and change the direction because the benefits articulated earlier on prior to COVID were not valid after or during the time of COVID. So things do change, so you need to kind of make sure that you accommodate for that particular change. If continuing with the project can no longer be justified, then it should be stopped and end in a controlled manner. Canceling a project in these circumstances is a positive contribution to the business, as the project's funds and resources can be reinvested in other more worthwhile projects. Now, after the project is completed, the project should be reviewed to evaluate if the benefits have materialized sufficiently to warrant the final investment and what lessons can be learned from the project. So those are a few guiding principles pertaining to the first one, which is continued business justification. Now let's move on to the second one, which is learn from experience. Now, what is the key message? Our PRINCE2 project and its team actively seeks, records, and implements improvements as a result of relevant lessons learned from prior projects and throughout the life of the project. It applies them in future projects and shares them for others to apply. Now, a common characteristic of projects is that they include an element of uniqueness. Now, this makes projects challenging as the temporary team may not have experience of a project quite like the one being undertaken. Now, to overcome these challenges, project teams need to find ways to learn from experience of others and from the experiences gained from the project as it develops. Now, the foundation for learning is data and the ability to gain insights from it. Now, mere data would not be of any benefit. Data should translate into information, and information should translate into knowledge and wisdom. Projects should be clear about what data is required, how it will be analyzed so that insights can be gained and applied, and what will happen to the project during the project and when the project closes. Now, project teams need to consider how to effectively share lessons with all those involved in the project, as people may have different learning needs and preferences. Some may learn best by observing, whereas others do by experimenting.